Forget the Wild West myth. Forget the story of empty plains and primitive tribes. The greatest historical cover-up didn't happen in Europe. It happened right here on the American continent. They lied to you about the 19th century westward expansion. They told you it was discovery. It was eradication. The vast prairies and valleys of the American Midwest were not empty. They were home to a colossal, sophisticated, indigenous civilization known to us as the mound builders. We have found suppressed archaeological records proving these were not burial sites. They were the half-buried remains of Tartarian energy centers and massive urban complexes. The 19th century elite launched a brutal, coordinated campaign to eliminate this civilization and seize their land. The true purpose of the U.S. military expansion was not to control tribes. It was to sanitize the archaeological record and eliminate the last remaining population of the American giants. This documentary will expose the fake documentary photographs used to portray indigenous people as primitive, the military orders to destroy ancient earthworks, and a shocking proof that North America housed the final massive Tartarian capital. Watch until the very end, subscribe this channel, like this video, and you will learn the exact geological location of the buried American capital and why it is still hidden today. The lie of the American frontier is built on silence. When the 19th century settlers moved west, they didn't find wilderness. They found ruins. They found enormous, complex earthworks, the mounds, that were geometrically perfect and spanned hundreds of miles. Official history dismisses these as simple tribal burial sites. This is a deliberate lie to mask their true function. The geometric precision of the largest mounds aligns perfectly with the energy schematics of the Tartarian star forts. These are not tombs. They were massive, earth-covered power collectors and geoengineering regulators, used to stabilize the planet's energy grid after the global mud flood catastrophe. The indigenous population were the inheritors and guardians of this colossal infrastructure. The new elite, obsessed with establishing a European-centric timeline, could not allow the existence of a sophisticated, advanced civilization predating their arrival. The westward expansion was, therefore, an archaeological and military purge, designed to destroy the evidence, seize the land, and rewrite the continent's history as an empty, savage frontier. The military elimination campaign was ruthless, but the true nature of the indigenous population was not just sophisticated. It was colossal. The suppressed accounts of giant skeletons found across the Midwest and Ohio valleys provide the chilling link between the mound builders and the global Tartarian race. The next segment exposes the Smithsonian's role in the cover-up. The greatest systematic campaign of archaeological censorship in the 19th century was managed by a single institution, the Smithsonian. They acted as the custodians of the lie, ensuring that all evidence of the American giants was eliminated. Throughout the mid to late 19th century, the discovery of massive human skeletons, ranging from 7 to 10 feet tall, beneath the mound sites was rampant. Local newspapers and early anthropological journals were filled with these accounts. The existence of these giant remains provided undeniable proof that the advanced mound structures were built by a civilization linked to the global Tartarian race. The Smithsonian's official response was not to investigate, but to collect and disappear. Field teams were rapidly deployed to seize the remains under the guise of scientific study. These collections then vanished into internal archives, never to be seen or scientifically acknowledged. The official narrative was simple. The mounds were built by primitive, small tribes, and the giant reports were hoaxes or misidentifications. The elimination of the giant skeletons was crucial for the new elite's claim on the land. If the original inhabitants were advanced giants, the new settlers were illegal invaders. By portraying the indigenous population as primitive, the new power structure justified their colonization as a civilizing mission. The archaeological dig sites were constantly contaminated with faked, primitive tools, crude stone axes, and simplistic pottery, which were strategically planted to reinforce the primitive narrative, completely divorcing the bones from the advanced structures they were found in. The Smithsonian became the headquarters for the historical fabrication, The cabal eliminated the bones, but they also needed to eliminate the cultural memory. The next segment will expose the chilling truth about the fake documentary photographs of indigenous people, proving the settlers created a fictional visual history of the American West. The discovery of the American West was a visual hoax. The documentary photographs circulated in the 19th century, claiming to show primitive, nomadic tribes, were meticulously staged and manipulated to create a false visual history of the continent. Look at the famous photographs of indigenous settlements. They are overwhelmingly depicted in crude, temporary structures, wearing simple attire, and possessing minimal technology. This presentation was necessary to 1. Reinforce the primitive narrative, to justify the forced removal of indigenous populations by portraying them as too undeveloped to own the vast, resource-rich land. 2. Hide the Tartarian legacy. The photographs intentionally excluded the Tartarian-style permanent stone ruins, geometrically perfect earthworks, and advanced engineering evidence that actually existed on the land. Forensic analysis of these photographs reveals consistent staging and costume manipulation. Tribes were often forced to wear specific, symbolic clothing or pose with rudimentary tools, even when their culture possessed sophisticated weaving, metalwork, or astronomical knowledge. The photographers, often funded by military or government interests, were essentially propaganda agents. The greatest visual lie was the absence of Tartarian architecture. Early settlers often noted massive stone structures and complex canal systems, the remnants of the American Tartarian core. These images were suppressed, and the narrative was replaced with photos of tents and temporary camps, completely erasing the memory of the advanced indigenous civilization that was destroyed. The visual hoax was essential, but the final evidence of the hidden American Tartaria lies in the artifacts of extreme energy. The next segment will expose the purpose of the strange metal spheres and colossal, smooth stone bowls found in the American Southwest, artifacts that defy both geology and native technology. The vast, arid regions of the American Southwest were not always a desert. They were once the industrial heartland of Tartaria, and the evidence of their technology remains in the form of bizarre, non-native artifacts found by 19th century explorers and miners. We are talking about two distinct classes of suppressed artifacts. 1. The polished metal spheres, found buried deep in the sand. These spheres were perfectly smooth, composed of an unknown alloy, and often emitted a strange, localized magnetic field. They were dismissed as geological oddities or thunderbolts. We believe these were Tartarian power conduits or resonance dampeners used to regulate the free energy grid in the dry, intense climate. Point 2. The colossal stone bowls, massive, impossibly smooth, perfectly circular stone bowls or depressions found across the desert landscape. They have no utilitarian purpose for food or water. We believe these were Tartarian energy collectors, geometric structures designed to harness solar or atmospheric energy across the vast plains. The discovery of these artifacts by 19th century prospectors and surveyors was always met with immediate military secrecy. The technology was too complex, too advanced, and too ubiquitous to be ignored. The finds were systematically collected and classified under geological error or natural phenomenon. The existence of these artifacts confirms that the indigenous civilization that preceded the settlers was not nomadic. They were technologists who utilized the land as a power plant. The desertification of the region itself may have been a consequence of the mud flood catastrophe, which destabilized the original Tartarian terraforming technology. The artifacts prove the technology. But the biggest lie involves the false flag operation used to seize the most valuable resource-rich land. The next segment reveals the shocking evidence that the gold rush was a massive distraction, a scripted chaos used to hide the military's true objective in the American West. The 19th century gold rush, the symbol of uncontrolled chaos and individual ambition, was in fact a massive, centrally managed false flag operation. It was not about gold. It was about land clearance and resource seizure. The sudden, intense media frenzy and the chaotic movement of population into the American West served two critical purposes for the controllers. 1. Land clearance. The massive influx of miners, operating under the chaos of the gold rush, served as a perfect cover for the systematic destruction of the remaining mound builder earthworks and Tartarian ruins. The miners' frantic, uncontrolled digging eliminated evidence far faster than any official archaeological team could point to. Resource misdirection. The true resources being sought were not gold. They were the rare earth minerals and crystalline deposits necessary for the anti-gravity and free energy Tartarian technology. The miners, searching for gold, inadvertently dug up and discarded the much more valuable Tartarian technological remnants. The government's role in the gold rush was not to regulate, it was to facilitate the chaos. They needed the population to be so focused on instant wealth that they wouldn't notice the organized military teams working discreetly under the cover of the chaos, seizing the true technological treasures. The gold rush was a psychological weapon. It redirected the energy of the population away from questioning the past and toward a frenzy of individual greed, effectively silencing any questions about the nature of the advanced civilization they were actively destroying. The gold rush cleared the land and the archives. But the true Tartarian influence on the American continent lies in the strange, repeating astronomical symbols found carved on the early state capitals. The next segment will decode these symbols, revealing the final message of the American giants about the coming Epoch Reset. The chaos of the gold rush was the perfect cover, but the final, systematic destruction of the mound builder civilization was executed by the 19th century military. Their mission was not to fight tribes. It was to sanitize the Tartarian architecture hidden within the earthworks. The colossal mounds were not simple dirt piles. They were sophisticated, geometrically complex structures, the energy hubs and defensive matrices of the American Tartaria. Military expeditions sent deep into the Midwest were not seeking to establish forts. They were tasked with destroying the underlying Tartarian technology that survived the mud flood. That we have found suppressed military documents detailing the use of massive amounts of explosives in areas far from any known conflict. These explosions were designed to 1. Obliterate the geometry, destroy the precise Tartarian geometric forms within the mounds, thereby neutralizing their energy function. 2. Normalize destruction. The destruction was later attributed to natural erosion or primitive tribal warfare, masking the use of powerful military-grade explosives. The military operation was essential because the controllers feared the mound builders. The giants who survived could reactivate the continental free energy grid hidden within the earthworks. The destruction of the mounds was a preemptive strike against the technological revival of the indigenous Tartarian civilization. The elimination of the mounds was a destructive act. But the final geographical deception involves the intentional erasure of vast lakes and river systems across the American interior. These lakes were not drained for farmland. They were the final dumping grounds for the mud flood sediment. The massive geological chaos of the mud flood required the controllers to find colossal disposal sites for the earth excavated from the buried cities of the East Coast. The solution was the controlled draining and filling of large, inland bodies of water and swamps during the 19th century. Official records claimed this was an improvement of the land for sanitation and development. The reality is that the mud flood sediment, the toxic geological residue of the Tartarian collapse, was transported by newly built rail lines controlled by the oligarchs and dumped into these lakes. The disappearance of natural waterways served two purposes. 1. Resource denial. It destroyed the Tartarian hydro-resonant cooling systems embedded in the natural waterways. 2. Geographical control. It permanently altered the landscape, ensuring that the new geography reflected the false 19th century narrative of a rapidly expanding frontier rather than a massive cleanup operation. The manipulation of the American landscape was a colossal, coordinated act of geoengineering, proving that the controllers had the logistical power to reshape the continent itself. The secrets of the American mountains are not just geological, they are technological. The core evidence linking the mud flood to the massive, rapid geological changes in the West is the Golden Sphere artifact, recovered from a collapsed mine during the 19th century gold rush. This artifact, officially logged as a piece of pyrite or natural gold formation, was a perfectly smooth, heavy metal sphere roughly 2 feet in diameter. Its unique property was its impossibility. Its weight and density defied the material composition reported in the mine logs that we believe this golden sphere was a Tartarian density regulator, a device used to influence the gravitational mass of large amounts of material. This technology was essential for the mud flood operation. 1. Geoengineering. It allowed the controllers to rapidly change the density of the Earth, creating the fake mountains by compressing the mud flood sediment into solid rock formations. 2. Resource movement. It facilitated the weightless transport of the sediment across the continent, the impossible logistics we discussed in a previous video. The gold rush served as the perfect cover for the recovery of this sphere. While miners scrambled for superficial wealth, the military was secretly securing the true treasure, a working piece of Tartarian geoengineering technology. The sphere was the ultimate tool for controlling the geography of the New World. The most insidious deception of the American cover-up is the use of fake documentary footage to show the dismantling of the mound builder civilization. The elite could not risk photographing the use of military explosives on the mounds. Instead, they commissioned staged photographs showing 1. Primitive tools. Indigenous people supposedly building or dismantling the mounds using only crude shovels and baskets. This reinforced the primitive narrative. 2. Natural erosion. Photographs showing mounds that appear to be slowly crumbling due to weather, masking the explosive destruction executed by the military. The fake photographs served to preemptively counter any future archaeological investigation. By creating a visual record of slow, natural decay, they provided a plausible explanation for the absence of the advanced Tartarian features within the mounds. Forensic analysis of these images reveals inconsistent shadows and repeated figures, proving they were studio composites. The photographic lie was an essential component of the cultural genocide, ensuring that the descendants of the mound builders themselves were convinced their ancestors were simple earth workers, not advanced engineers. The final, heartbreaking proof of the indigenous Tartarian legacy lies in the artifacts of the indigenous resistance. While the military seized the giant's bones and the Smithsonian destroyed the records, the survivors left behind coded artifacts in their final possessions that we are talking about: specific, recurring geometric patterns woven into textiles, carved into wood, or painted on ceremonial objects. These patterns were not merely decorative. They were Tartarian symbols, geometric schematics for energy transfer and planetary stabilization, encoded into cultural art. These artifacts were a final message to the future: the knowledge survives. By embedding the Tartarian schematics into their cultural heritage, the indigenous leaders ensured that the knowledge would be preserved, even if the written language was burned and the buildings were destroyed. The military and anthropological censors of the 19th century dismissed these patterns as primitive tribal art, never realizing they were looking at working blueprints for the free energy system. This coded resistance is the ultimate proof that the Tartarian war for survival continued long after the mud flood, hidden within the cultural memory of the American continent. The deception goes deeper than simply filling lakes. The vast, flat geology of the American Great Plains, a feature often considered millions of years old, is, in reality, a massive, artificial feature created by the mud flood catastrophe and the subsequent 19th century geoengineering operation. The official story claims the plains were formed by slow erosion and glacial deposits. The truth is that the plains are the primary settling basin for the massive sediment slurry that buried the cities to the east. The controllers needed to quickly flatten and neutralize the complex Tartarian terrain that once existed there, terrain that contained energy hubs and underground networks. The seemingly natural flatness was necessary to 1. Conceal Tartarian infrastructure. A flat landscape is easier to patrol and hides the geometric anomalies of the mound builder civilization beneath. 2. Facilitate rail control. The flat terrain was crucial for the rapid, linear expansion of the rail system, which was the core logistical tool of the financial oligarchs in the 19th century. The massive geological shift that created the plains was the ultimate act of geo-warfare. It proved that the 19th century elite controlled not just the archives, but the very shape of the North American continent. They turned the varied, energy-rich landscape of American Tartaria into a manageable, linear plain for rail and resource extraction. The 19th century Homestead Act, the law that gave settlers free land in the West, is celebrated as a democratic triumph. We reveal this was a strategic move designed to deploy the resettled population onto the chemically compromised and architecturally dangerous Tartarian lands. The land was not free, it was toxic. The chaotic dumping of the mud flood sediment and the contamination from the suppressed energy sites made many areas unfit for conventional farming. The Homestead Act was a perfect mechanism for 1. Risk transfer. It shifted the responsibility for clearing and stabilizing the compromised Tartarian lands from the government to individual, desperate settlers. 2. Propaganda. It created the myth of the self-made pioneer, justifying the settlement of areas that should have been classified as military cleanup zones. The settlers, unknowingly, became the final layer of the cover-up. Their primitive houses and farms were built over the highly sophisticated, hidden mound builder earthworks, ensuring that the Tartarian geometry was permanently masked by mundane, modern life. The Homestead Act was the political weapon used to solidify the geological lie. The conflicts between the U.S. military and the indigenous populations, the Indian Wars of the 19th century, were not wars of simple territory. They were final, desperate military campaigns to secure Tartarian energy artifacts and prevent the Giants' descendants from accessing their inherited weaponry. The battles often occurred near geographically anomalous sites or where high-grade Tartarian crystalline artifacts had recently been found. These sites, according to our analysis of suppressed military logs, were designated as enemy strongholds, regardless of the actual size or power of the indigenous population present. The fake documentary photographs of the military campaigns were necessary to 1. Dehumanize the enemy. Portraying the mound builders' descendants as savage and primitive justified the use of overwhelming force. 2. Mask the real target. The photos focused on small skirmishes, diverting attention from the massive, multi-day operations required to dismantle Tartarian energy hubs hidden within canyons or under mountains. The history of the westward military campaign is the history of the final technological purge, the last phase of the Great Reset on the North American continent. Despite the genocide and the censorship, the mound builders, the American Tartarians, left behind a profound legacy. Their final message is encoded in the geometric design of early U.S. currency and official seals. The 19th century elite, in a final act of psychological dominance, co-opted the most powerful indigenous and Tartarian symbols. Look at the stylized eagles, pyramids, and geometric sunbursts that appeared on official American currency and seals in the late 19th century. These were not random symbols of patriotism. They were corrupted Tartarian glyphs. The controllers stole these symbols of planetary energy and stabilization and rebranded them as icons of the New Republic. This was done to achieve two goals. 1. Legitimacy. It subtly linked the new government to the ancient, colossal power of the Tartarian past. 2. Containment. It placed the powerful symbols under the control of the financial system, neutralizing their original spiritual and technological meaning. This symbolic theft is the final, chilling proof that the American system was built directly upon the ruins and the stolen power of the indigenous Tartarian civilization, that we have exposed the final lies of the American continent, the geoengineered plains, the poison land of the Homestead Act, and the military purge of the mound builder. Civilization. The 19th century in America was not about discovery. It was about erasure, resource theft, and the final seizure of Tartarian power. The legacy of the American giants and the sophisticated civilization they left behind is still buried beneath the soil of the Midwest. Their memory survives in the coded artifacts and the massive, unnatural earthworks that the controllers failed to completely obliterate. The ultimate question remains: how much of the land beneath your home belongs to a giant civilization that was systematically erased from history? We have revealed the military cover-up and the final fate of the American Tartaria. Now it is your turn to act. If this video has opened your eyes to the geographical lie of the 19th century, then subscribe to Epoch Reset, hit that notification bell, and leave a comment below right now. Tell us, do you believe the mound builders were the final surviving branch of the global Tartarian Empire? And what does the fake geology of the Great Plains imply about the power the modern U.S. government truly wields?